This past week, I happened to be in our commons twice at just the right time when the sun was going down in the west, and it shone through into the commons in a beautiful way, brilliant, kind of almost blinding and radiant. And so for both moments, when I was just greeting the children coming for their choir practice, and I can't remember the other time, I actually just invited us all to just look, let's not miss this, you know? At a certain point though, for me, my eyes settled on the doors, and I thought, what a beautiful image of what the church is called to be, and every baptized Christian, every believer, a transparent door to and from the presence of Jesus, a bridge to people's encounter with him in a very credible way. You know, I was at a parish for some years. None of the doors were glass. I'm not sure that would have been the best symbol, huh? But we really want to radiate his light. As I looked a little more closely, despite being cleaned every week, those doors had fingerprints all over them. And mostly, but where the children come, you know, but also adults, it turns out, don't always use the handles. So be it, you know. And I thought to myself, that actually just furthers the image. That to bear the Lord's light, we actually have to be genuinely accessible to people, willing to get close enough, even if that involves a little bit of entering into messiness. Willing to be touched. You know, today we celebrate this beautiful feast of the presentation of the child Jesus. Mary and Joseph, faithful Jews, that 40th day brought him into the temple. It's the fourth joyful mystery of the Rosary. Another name for this Mass is Candlemas. That's why we had some of our RCA candidates representing all of us, bearing in procession these lit candles to the altar, to this place of encounter with the Lord. No? But it's a lot we can learn from this mystery, this presentation. Just think about it. Mary, who bore the light of the world within her, Mary, who gave birth to the light of the world in the dark cave at Bethlehem, now bears this light in her hands, as it were, into the temple. So when we ponder this encounter, we really can unfold and learn, how is it that you and I bear this light? How do we know? Are we intentional about it? What allows the light to shine through of Jesus, and what obscures that light in our own lives? So I want to share with you, if my day goes well, I am up sometime before 5 a.m. So that means year-round, it's dark. And I have a little routine trying to give my first waking thoughts to God, It's not always, to be, you're stumbling, you're tired, you're groggy. But just trying to make myself aware of him. I offer you today, Lord. And then I get the coffee started, huh? And I have this little chair where I say my morning prayers and do my spiritual reading. But before I turn on the light, the electricity, I have a little candle there that I light. And sometimes just allowing my eyes to focus on this. But for me, it's so important. It's one of my favorite moments of baptizing children, towards the very end, where we light a candle and give it to the godparents. Christ now lives in them. He abides in them, branches on the vine. And they're told to keep this light burning brightly. So yesterday was the 49th anniversary of my baptism. And believe it or not, it's an anniversary that I celebrate more than my anniversary of ordination as a priest. In fact, I don't have anything to offer as a priest unless I'm living my baptism with childlike trust. Like every good thing comes from the Lord, and He wants me to pass that through, to not be an obstacle, to be a door, a clear door to and from the presence of Jesus. So a question I'd ask, what can we learn about Simeon and Anna? You know, these elders. Well, sometimes St. Luke really helps us. And in his account of what happened here, I don't know if you picked up on this, he uses the word waiting 3 times. Now, we're talking waiting in terms of decades. He even spells it out that Anna was only married for 7 years and then decades as a widow. And Simeon's in his 9th decade, right? They waited. I had this beautiful insight here in Confessions yesterday, as the Lord continues just to educate us through all of life, that the cardinal virtue of temperance, you know, prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, which often gets a bad name, we often reduce it to just saying no to pleasures, saying no to urges. I had a little epiphany of how beautiful temperance is. Temperance is that strength of soul that makes us not chase the neon signs and the flashing lights. And when we live temperance, it actually allows us to stay in life as an adventure. Not a choose your own adventure, but adventure that follows Jesus. Like, I'm willing to be led in life. So when you think of food and drink, when you think of the gift of our sexuality, when you just think of even technology, maybe that's where temperance really comes into play today. Our relationship with our phones and media and the news narrative. And it feels like if we are not waiting on the one who alone can satisfy our deepest desire, we are filling ourselves, we are chasing counterfeit lights. And of course, what's at stake is then His light doesn't shine through us to other people in an attractive, credible way that draws people in. You know, we had a wonderful visioning day on Friday with a lot of our parish staff on evangelization team. We're making this key pivot, really important, from an old way of doing things as a church that maybe hasn't served us well. Maybe it's kind of been an unhealthy, enabling sort of thing, to genuinely family formation. But one of the questions we came was like, how do you all who are in the current momentum, how do you become bridges for people to fill the gap? For those many Catholic Christians who are with us, they're ours, but they're not maybe in the current. How do we do that? There's no program. I can't think up the answer. I just know that each of us bears that responsibility, and it's a beautiful adventure if we allow ourselves to be radiant of His light in us. What can we learn from Mary? You know, Mary at her Magnificat, who was completely aware of who she was and who she wasn't. He has looked with favor on my lowliness. Another translation would say, my nothingness. You see, sometimes when we hear, I have to be the light of Jesus, we think, I have to be strength all the time. And the reality is, If you have self-awareness, self-knowledge, you know that you're filled with your own weak spots, weakness, poverty, fears, vulnerabilities. But that's not what it means to be the light. And in this moment, when Mary gives Jesus, imagine this, those of you who lived motherhood at that radiant season where they're young, and it says, oh, a sword of sorrow is going to pierce your heart. Mother Teresa would say about this for the Virgin Mary that it was one of the most beautiful graces she was given. And we'd say, really? Because she said it meant she could never close her heart. You know, I'm going to chase a false light to protect myself. Mary always lived with an open ache towards God and a vulnerability and compassion towards others. I like, at least in my prayer, my experience of Mary, is that she teared up and cried easily. She allowed herself to be affected by other people. She allowed herself to be affected by beauty, by what's true and what's good. She didn't go numb. She didn't go numb. She suffered her ache towards the Lord, always towards Him. You know, in this little emblem over Mary, some have asked what that means. Well, it's the back of the miraculous medal, right? Very popular medal in our tradition. Obviously, the 12 stars for the 12 apostles, the M, Mary made it to the foot of the cross. But then you see those two hearts, the crown, and then Mary with a sword through that heart. And I wonder if you and I could be open to being pierced where we are trying to be strong in a self-reliant way. That's never what it means to show forth the light of Christ. It's to say, Lord, I give you permission through my imperfect humanity, my brokenness. I want to be an instrument. And I'm not going to kick the can down the road until I get my act together. Today, here and now, I want you to be able to direct my life for the good of others. Those who maybe are living in darkness. I want to be the candle that goes to that place. I don't want to be afraid. I don't want to live my own measure. Really want to encourage us. I'm going to close with a prayer, and a portion of this prayer is behind Mary in this beautiful chapel of hers. But it's a prayer that was written by St. John Henry Newman and prayed every day by Mother Teresa of Calcutta after she received communion. When I get to serve her sisters once a year out in Washington, D.C., they pray this prayer to this day, all the sisters. After communion, after Mass is over, I go kneel down and pray it with them. And I think it drives at what this feast is inviting us to. So if you'd permit me just to close with this prayer, which is in my heart as pastor for me and for us. That we would be doors, transparent, to and from Jesus. That we would be light. That we would go to people with this light unafraid, wanting to draw more and more to Him. Dear Jesus, help us to spread your fragrance everywhere we go. Flood our souls with your spirit and life. Penetrate and possess our whole being so utterly that our lives may only be a radiance of yours. Shine through us and be so in us that every soul we come in contact with may feel your presence in our souls. Let them look up and see no longer us, but only Jesus. Stay with us, and then we shall begin to shine as you shine. So to shine as to be a light to others. The light, O Jesus, will be all from you. None of it will be ours. It will be you shining on others through us. Let us thus praise you in the way you love best, by shining on those around us. Let us preach you without preaching, not by words, but by example, by the catching force the sympathetic influence of what we do, the evident fullness of the love our hearts bear for you. Amen.